Today in this 2017 Chevrolet Silverado 3500, we'll be having a look at and showing you how to install the Airlift Load Lifter 7500 XL air helper springs for the rear axle. Part number AL57538. Here's what our airbags look like installed. These airbags are going to allow us to support up to 7,500 pounds of weight in the bed of our truck, or towing a gooseneck or fifth wheel trailer with a high pin weight. This will maintain our vehicle's ride height, giving us smoother braking, steering, and just a better ride down the road in general. Now, when you compare these to other options, these are a bump stop replacement option. They replace your factory bump stop here, which as you can see is quite small. When you're comparing these to other suspension enhancement options, such as the Timbren bump stop replacement, you can see how much bigger the Timbren is over the factory one, but how much smaller it is compared to our Airlift airbag. Now, the Airlift airbag is completely adjustable. The Timbren bump stop replacement is not. This will just give you a load leveling support once you actually have weight in the bed of the truck. It's also going to give you a harsher ride for when you actually do make contact with it. However, with the airbag, it acts as a cushion, so you can add as much air as necessary and not overinflate your system, so you can maintain ride height and still have your factory suspension do its job properly to help absorb the shocks as you're going down the road. And what's great about these airbags is, depending upon how much weight we have in the vehicle, we can easily adjust them between 5 and 100 psi to suit our needs. Now, while these give you 7,500 pounds of load leveling support, they're not going to increase your gross vehicle weight rating by 7,500 pounds. Your vehicle's still only capable of carrying the same amount of weight or towing the same amount of weight as it was from the factory. This will just allow you to do it at factory ride height, maintain your steering, your braking, your headlight angle up to 7,500 pounds. We're going to take a few baseline measurements with our truck at factory ride height without any weight in the bed or without a trailer attached. We'll start in the rear. We'll measure from the ground through the center of our wheel and up to where our fender is. And we're looking at about 42.5 inches. We're taking the same measurement on the front, and we're about 40 inches here. Now we have some weight in the bed of our truck, and we're going to compare our measurements to the factory measurements. In the rear, we're about 41 inches, so we've gone down about 1.5 inches. In the front, we're about 40.5 inches, so we've gone up about 1/2 inch. When we have weight in the back of the truck, or we're towing a heavy gooseneck or fifth wheel trailer, or just a standard trailer, the back end of the truck comes down and the front end comes up. So we have less weight on our front tires. By having less weight on our front tires, we weren't able to steer and handle quite as well. Also, our front brakes do the majority of our braking. So by not having all the weight up here, our brakes aren't able to stop our vehicle as well as they could before. Now that we have the airbags installed and our weight back in the bed of the truck, we're going to double check our measurements again and see if we can maintain our ride height with the weight. So we'll just take the same measurements again and see where we're at. Okay, we're back to 42.5 inches, so we're back to factory ride height in the rear. Let's double check the front now. And we're back at 40 in the front. By leveling everything back out, we have our steering, our handling, our braking. Also, we won't have as much tire wear either, because when the front end comes up, we get what's called positive camber, and that'll wear the outside edge of the tire more. By having it come back down to normal ride height, our tires are more straight up and down, so we'll get more even wear. Also, our headlight angle is back to where it was before. Our headlights won't be up in the trees or blinding oncoming drivers. They'll be down on the road where we need them, so we can see safely at night. Now we'll take the truck out on the test course with our airbags installed. On the left side of the screen, you'll notice the vehicle without the airbags installed, and on the right side, you'll see it with them installed. We'll be going over some bumps. With the airbags installed, you can see how much less jouncing and jarring there is going on. It's because the suspension is able to do its job properly. This will give us much more handling and braking ability with the airbags installed. To begin our install, we're going to be working on the driver's side of our vehicle This is our factory bump stop. We need to remove this. In order to do that, we'll just take a flathead screwdriver, stick it inside, pry down. As we pull, and we can discard this, we won't need it anymore. On the back side of our axle, we have a 13mm bolt that holds the bracket in for our brake line and ABS wire. We're going to remove this bolt. And we'll just pull this back away from the axle. We have a bracket on the driver's side frame that holds our parking brake cable in place. We're going to remove this 13mm bolt. Take the bracket off the frame. Take it off the cable. And we'll discard the bracket. Now we'll take one of our air spring assemblies, one of our roll plates. This lip here will face up and it'll rest over the air spring. Take one of our fittings and we'll screw it in finger tight, and then we'll tighten it 1.5 turns with the wrench. Now we'll take our driver's side bracket for the upper part of the spring. We know it's the driver's side because it has an L for left, and the passenger side will have an R for right. Slide this over there. The fitting will face out like this. Line up all of our holes together, and we'll secure it in place with these flathead bolts. Tighten these down with a hex socket. Now we'll use a torque wrench to torque those bolts to the amount specified in the instructions. We flipped our airbag assembly over now. We'll take our roll plate, sit it over the bottom. We'll take our lower bracket now, stick it over. We'll be using this first hole here and this third hole here. This angle section goes on the side where our fitting is. So we have it oriented the correct way right now. And we'll secure it with our bolt again. And tighten and torque. We've gone ahead and jacked up our vehicle a little bit to take some weight off the rear suspension. We're using a pole jack in this case. You can also use a floor jack. I want to point out that our wheels are still touching the ground. We just took a little bit of weight off the axle. We'll now take our airbag assembly, slide it in place on top of our axle, making sure our brake line goes in front of the bracket, and it'll rest around our factory bump stop mounting point. Now, if your truck does not have a fifth wheel or gooseneck mounting plates on the outside edge of the frame, you can secure the upper bracket to the frame with this U-bolt. Just make sure that this side goes behind the wires and any brake lines on the driver's side of the frame, and you'll just clamp it to that. Now, if you do have gooseneck or fifth wheel plates on the outside of the frame like we do, we'll drill a hole through this middle hole here into our frame and secure it in place with the self-tapping bolts, which is what we're going to do today. So we'll just make sure that our hole is centered in the middle of our frame, and then we'll lower the frame back down onto our bracket to make sure it'll hold it in place, and we'll drill our holes. With our hole drilled, we'll now use the self-tapping bolt to secure the bracket to the frame. Now we'll torque that bolt to the amount specified in the instructions. Now we'll repeat the same process for the other location. Now we'll take our carriage bolts, drop them through our lower bracket on both sides. Take our axle clamp, go onto our carriage bolts, place a flat washer on, followed by a nylon lock nut. Now we'll tighten these down evenly. So we'll just alternate, making sure it's even. And then we'll torque them to the amount specified in the instructions. Now we'll take our metric bolt and our metric washer. We'll line up our brake line to the threaded spot on our lower bracket and secure it with this hardware. We use a zip tie on our driver's side to secure our parking brake cable to our bracket here, just to keep the cable away from our airbag. With our driver's side airbag now in place, we can repeat the exact same process for the passenger side. This is our airline fitting on top of our airbag. We're going to take our airline, it's one piece with fittings at both ends. We'll use an airline tubing cutter, which we have available on our website, to cut our line right down the middle so we have two equal length pieces. This is part number AL10530. We want to ensure that we have a straight cut all the way across. Now we'll take our line and we'll push it into our fitting. The way these fittings work is you simply push in all the way until it stops, and then you can pull back on it to make sure it's secure. Now we're going to route our airline to the rear of the vehicle, making sure we avoid any moving parts and sources of heat. On our passenger side, we repeated the same process of making our connection with the airline to the fitting. With one exception, before we plugged it in, we slid this protective shielding over the line to help protect it from heat. We also took our exhaust heat shield to protect our airbag from the heat of the exhaust. We just bent it to follow the contours of the exhaust pipe and to maintain an air clearance between the airbag and the heat shield, and we secured it with the two hose clamps that come with the kit. Our driver's side airline, we routed up and secured it to this wiring harness following above our cross members on our frame, and then it comes behind our hitch and we'll secure it to our bumper later. We'll show you our routing for our passenger side now. For passenger side, we secured to the hole for our U-bolt for the bracket. Since we're not using the U-bolt, it's a great place to secure it. And then we went up over our frame and secured to this wiring harness here. Now we need to find a location on our bumper to mount our airlines. We're going to mount our fittings right in this area here in front of our license plate light. We'll have plenty of room to hook up an air hose and check the pressure with it. Also, there's nothing behind here that we have to worry about going through as we drill our hole. So we use the proper size drill bit as indicated in the instructions and make our hole. Now we'll take our fitting, a hex nut, a star washer, and we'll insert this from the back side of the bumper facing out. Now we'll place on a rubber washer and a flat washer. Then we'll thread on another hex nut, and then we'll just tighten it down securely. With that in place, we'll do the same on the other side. We went ahead and secured up our excess airline tubing in case we ever need to make any repairs using a couple zip ties. Now we'll go ahead and put some air in the system and check for any leaks. We'll use some soapy water and spray our fittings and look for any air bubbles. Small bubbles are okay. We're just looking for large ones. Okay, with this one checking out with no leaks, we'll do the same process for all of our other fittings just to be sure. And that completes our look at and showing you how to install the Airlift Load Lifter 7500 XL air helper springs for the rear axle, part number AL57538, on this 2017 Chevrolet Silverado 3500.